All right, happy Halloween. Ooh. Are these guys spooky enough to be in a Halloween themed video? I don't know. I think so. Two black cats, that's a Halloween themed enough, right? But yeah, today we're going to be taking a look at Transformers War for Cybertron, Covert Agent Ravage, and Decepticons Forever Ravage. Yeah, this is a pretty cool set. This is our Hasbro PulseCon exclusive for this year. We had the Hasbro PulseCon a week or two ago. And yeah, the set has already arrived, so that's a pretty fast time. But yeah, basically what these guys are is this guy is a new version of the Beast Wars Ravage, and this guy is just a straight up reissue of the G1 Ravage. Because in the Beast Wars cartoon, of course, you're familiar with Ravage. He didn't really have a mode like this. He was just the bipedal robot, which obviously is the robot mode for this guy. But the only time he transformed in the show itself, he like transformed back into a G1 cassette. So obviously they weren't going to do that in toy form. So instead, they opted to just include a reissue of a G1 Ravage along with this set, which I appreciate. I haven't had a G1 Ravage until now, so it's cool to have him. But yeah, we can take a look at these guys a little bit individually. Real quick, we'll just take a look at the G1 Ravage. He's pretty simple. The only difference I think between him and like other Ravage reissues is that he doesn't have any stickers. It's all tampograph detail on there, which is nice. I think that's about it. But yeah, he looks pretty good in his little Jaguar mode. As always with G1 Ravage, it's like, oh, he looks really good from this angle. And then when you turn him to the front, he's just a very skinny boy. Kind of reminds me of that weird sort of like saw blade robot from the second Transformers movie, where it's like, oh, he had the form, and then he would turn to the front and he'd be invisible because he was just so thin. Obviously, this came first, but I wasn't really thinking about that at the time since he was associated to Ravage in the movie as well. But maybe that was a reference to this. I'm not sure. But yeah, he's a nice little Jaguar mode here. Obviously, he's got his little chromed out missiles here, which he looks kind of incomplete without him. Like, he looks okay again from this angle, but then he's even more skinny from the front. They do help to like give him a bit of depth in his robot mode. But yeah, transformation wise, he's very simple. He's just like flip the head in like that, flip the tail in like that. Take these feet here, and they kind of fold up like that. I guess you want to do the other feet first. They fold up just like that. You kind of tuck in the paws here so that line lines up, and then fold it up like that. And there you have him in his cassette mode. Pretty simple. I don't have a G1 Soundwave to put him in, but it's a nice cassette mode. Obviously, these pieces don't store at all in this mode, just like they never did with any of the G1 cassettes, but he's a pretty cool little figure. I do like that he's got some metal bits here. The legs, the most of the like silver part of the legs are die cast, as are these like rivets that are holding in the legs. But yeah, he's a pretty simple little dude here. Here he is with the Netflix version of the Micromaster Ravage that goes with the Siege and Netflix Soundwave. So you can see they're pretty good there. Obviously, he's much more of like a complete cassette and definitely a bit bigger, but they look nice together. But that's pretty much all there is to him. Like, he's a pretty simple guy. He just transforms into this little dude who's really, really skinny from the front. In terms of articulation, like, his legs can go forward and back. They can bend a bit at the knees in either direction. The feet can tilt forward and back. The hind legs, they can go forward and back there, and at the knees and at the feet as well. And then the tail can kind of bob up and down, as can the head. But you're not getting like a tremendous number of poses out of him, because like he needs to be able to stand, so he kind of needs some feet on the ground no matter what. You can get him in like some slight poses, but he's always going to look like kind of a relief sculpture rather than like an actual three-dimensional object. But he's a cool little G1 toy. Can't really complain about that. So yeah, we'll just put him off to the side for now and get to what I would consider anyway to be the main event, which is the Covert Agent Ravage, who is the Beast Wars Ravage. And yeah, he looks pretty okay in his Jaguar still, I guess, mode. It's a little bit strange and awkward. It's mostly like using the Cheetor and Shadow Panther mold. There is kind of a surprising amount of like remolding and different parts on this guy. Like, really, the only parts that are actually the original figure, I'm pretty sure are just like the legs, like the pretty much just the animal legs, really, even because even his thigh pieces in robot mode are different. So he's a pretty much a new figure. He has similar transformation things, but mostly he's pretty different. But yeah, he looks nice. You can get a look at his head sculpt there, which is also going to be his robot mode head sculpt. You can open his mouth there, and it's kind of painted on the inside, which is really nice. I like that they got that detail in there. In terms of articulation, the mouth, obviously, his head can kind of move back and forth here. The front legs, they're on ball joints. They don't have that like swivel section that the original figure had. The original being, you know, the Cheetor mold, but you get to pretty much the same effect. Except it's just like, you know, it's connected a little bit higher up here. So the rotation is also like higher up, like where the ball joint is. Whereas, you know, the other versions of this figure, the rotation ends up being a little bit lower because it's actually moving on a swivel, not the ball joint. Doesn't make a huge difference. The legs, what's worth mentioning is I think that there's like a bit of a misassembly of this guy out of the box. I was like, when I was looking at images of him online, I was noticing that like he looks a little bit strange. Like obviously he looks strange in his Jaguar mode, but the front legs particularly looked kind of odd. And I realized when I was holding the guy that the legs were actually on the wrong side. So I just popped them off the ball joint and switched them. But basically they were like backwards like this, which I think makes them look really weird. So I just switched them. It was a little bit scary to do because I think the ball joint sections that it's attached to are attached to kind of a thin piece of plastic. So I think it's relatively safe to do once if you're being careful, but I wasn't going to bother kind of switching it back for just to show that off in this review. But I think he looks much better with the legs kind of the same way that Cheetor and Shadow Panthers were. But yeah, he's got that knee joint there, which can only go, you know, if you leave it how it is out of box, can only go about that much because he's got that like tuft of hair on his knee there. His feet are on ball joints. The feet are actually a new mold. They're not the same feet that are on Cheetor or Shadow Panther, and they're not even the same mold as each other. Again, like Cheetor and Shadow Panther, like for whatever reason, the front feet and the back feet are actually different molds, as you can see by the footprint there looking quite different. I'm not sure why they did that. They could have just used the same piece, but that's cool. The back legs here are pretty similar to Cheetor's legs. Like I said, like everything from here down, besides the feet, are the same mold. So they can kind of rotate out to the side there, rotate back like that. The knees can rotate, the feet are on ball joints, and then his tail is actually on a hinge because it's a different piece than the weapon that came with Cheetor and Shadow Panther. So yeah, fairly okay articulation. I mean, it's still pretty similar to the other version of this mold, but you know, still it works well enough. He comes with his two little weapons here. For storage in this mode, you can just store them the same place that they store in robot mode by like tabbing them onto the side of the thighs here. Now, unfortunately, this tab is a square tab, and I really wish that they had gone with a circular peg for this so that you could like actually peg it in and kind of angle it up to kind of mimic like the original shoulder, you know, like the original like launchers that are on the original Ravage. Like I said, you know, this guy never like existed in this mode in the Beast Wars cartoon, so there's not really any basis for it, but it would have just been, I feel like, finished off the look a lot to like have him turn into a, you know, a Jaguar that has still that similar, you know, like Ravage aesthetic with the guns over his thighs. I don't know, that would have been cool. As it is, you can peg them in that way, but because they don't rotate at all, like they're just pointing straight into his front legs. So I tend to just put them the way that they are for, you know, robot mode storage, which is just upside down like this and pointed back. Not ideal. Again, I really wish that they could actually like peg in using the pegs or had pegs for these instead of tabs so they could go over the shoulder or over the hips, but whatever, you know, it's good enough. And that does kind of hide some of the weirdness in his back end here. But yeah, he's fairly good, all right, in this mode. He's not like anything too crazy or anything like that. In terms of comparison, here he is again with the little Micromaster Ravage and the G1 one. I mean, you already saw those two together, but just so you can see some different versions of Ravage here. They look pretty good together. And then here he is with Shadow Panther, who is, you know, kind of a similar themed idea to Ravage, at least Beast Wars Ravage in a lot of ways. Even though I guess he turns into a Jaguar, he turns into a Panther. So I guess they're slightly different animals, but you know they look pretty cool together. But yeah, in terms of transformation, you can leave these on if you want. I'll just take them off for the sake of the review. But as you can see, it's going to be like quite a bit different to Cheetor's. The one thing that's very much the same is the legs. You just fold them down at the knee here. You can kind of just fold the tail back and then take the bottom section of the legs, rotate it into the top section, and then rotate out his feet. If you have any version of that Cheetor mold, you know, that's very much par for the course. Pretty much here down is the exactly the same mold again, except for his little, you know, jaguar feet. And then for the whole section here, it's actually quite different. You want to like pull this section out. I find that it's easy if you push these in a little bit so that they kind of, you know, unclip themselves from the back section here, and that makes it a lot easier to fold that out like that. And then you can take the front legs here of the Jaguar and fold them into the back, and this little tab here will go into this little slot here, just so they sit kind of relatively cleanly on the back. They kind of do stick out, but you know, it's not too big a deal. And then for his robot mode arms, which are actually those panels in the back, which I think is pretty cool, they rotate out like this, unfold them here, rotate them on the bicep swivel, rotate his hand around so it's facing forward, do the same thing on both sides. A lot of the joints on this guy are very tight, which is nice, but you know, some of them you want to like give special care to, so you're not just gonna risk like snapping it off of the mushroom peg or whatever. And then his Jaguar head, you fold it in like this, and then this tab in the back here will go into basically this little slot on the neck piece there. And then you want to make sure that these are kind of like widened enough so that these little tabs right in there, I don't know if you can see them, so black there, will go into these sections right there, kind of snap into place, and there you have Ravage in his robot mode. And yeah, I think this is where this guy really shines. I mean, obviously, this is the mode that he's intended to really be displayed in, because this is how he actually looked in the Beast Wars cartoon, but he looks super nice. I like the use of the silver here, most of which doesn't really show up in the Jaguar mode itself. And I think it's really clever how they're able to, you know, do this thing with a head where it looks mostly natural in both modes. I'd say it looks a little bit more natural in this mode than it does in the other one, but you know, it works relatively well. In terms of articulation, the head can kind of rotate back and forth there, only about that much. It can't really tilt too much up and down. Again, the mouth still opens, which is nice. The shoulders here are on swivels, so they can rotate all the way around here and then rotate out like that. Very tight. He's got bicep swivels, a double hinged elbow, so it can, you know, pretty much fold up all the way. Wrist swivels. Anything at the waist? Yeah, he does have a waist joint. There you go. Waist swivel right there. Hips forward. Can only go back about that much just because of this piece. Can go out to the side about that much. He's got a thigh swivel, which is pretty much just at the knee. And then the knee can bend about that far. It's relatively about the same as the original use of this mold. And then the feet, just like the original use of this mold, are pretty good. They can tilt forward and back and tilt out to the side. So a pretty good amount of movement there, which is good because he does have kind of small feet. So it's important for being able to get his feet like flat-footed on the ground. But yeah, in terms of the use of his weapons, obviously he can just hold these in his hands, and he looks pretty good with those. And then what's nice is the storage for these weapons is pretty much just how it was in the show. He just puts them on his hips here. They just tab on like that. Here, I don't mind it being a tab instead of a peg. I guess I'd still rather it be a peg, so you could like rotate them to the back a little bit instead of just having them like straight down parallel with his legs. But you know, I think it still works relatively well. Here he is again with Shadow Panther, just so you can see what they look like in their robot modes. Obviously, very different aesthetic choices here, but still kind of both black versions of Cheetor. Here he is with Beast Wars Kingdom Megatron, even though, you know, like he all of his scenes in Beast Wars were with the Transmetal version of Megatron, not this version, but we don't have a new version of the Transmetal Megatron yet, so that'll have to do for now. Here he is with Siege Megatron, just so you can see what he looks like with his original boss there. And then along those same lines, here he is with the Netflix Soundwave. So yeah, Obviously, these two never shared any screen time in these forms, but they look kind of cool together. And then last but not least, here he is again with the Micromaster Ravage and the original, one that he's included with the G1 Ravage. And yeah, they look pretty good together. Obviously, these two are the ones that come in the set together. But yeah, it's a pretty cool set overall. I don't usually show off the packaging for these kind of things, but with the exclusives, they they put effort into making it like a kind of special kind of packaging. And what's really cool about this here is that if you look inside the box here, if you're not getting too much glare, there's like a a nice little cassette door thing going on, so that if you take the original, the G1 Ravage, and put him back into his cassette mode, come on, there we go. You can open up the box here and kind of slot him in there like that. And then I guess you could also take him and put him on there on display. And I think that's a fairly cool display piece. I mean, I'm probably not going to display him like in the box like that, but still pretty cool. I think that's a neat sort of thing there. So you can kind of, recreate that scene in the show where he sort of like weirdly folds himself up into a into this cassette, even though he clearly doesn't have any cassette parts anymore. So still pretty cool. But yeah, it's a pretty cool set overall. The one thing about it that I wasn't too thrilled with is the price. Like, this set costs about as much as a leader class figure, and I don't understand the justification for that. Like, for our last big exclusive set, the Pit of Judgment, it like was pretty much 1-to-1 for the figures that came with it. Like, the set came with a Voyager, a Deluxe, a Legends class basically, and then 2 little extra figures. And with those 2 little extra figures costing about $10 total, like, that's pretty much what the accumulation of the price of the set cost. Whereas this set is a Deluxe and a G1 reissue cassette. They even refer to it like in the like on the website as a Micromaster, which is weird because it's not technically, but like still they're marketing this as a Micromaster and a Deluxe for $50. I don't know about that. Like, I get it, you can mark it up a little bit because it's the Hasbro PulseCon exclusive, but that feels scummy. Like, I think it would already be pushing it to make it like a Voyager price, since it is a Deluxe and a G1 reissue cassette. But I don't know, like, I could justify that a little bit more. I mean, obviously, I knew the price and I still picked up the set because I did want a version of Beast Wars Ravage, because, it's only so often that we get a version of this character. So it's a cool set to pick up. But yeah, that definitely raised an eyebrow when I saw that it was the price of a leader class. Like, I don't know. That seems a little bit scummy. But either way, he's a cool figure, and I do appreciate getting a little G1 Ravage here. So that's about all there is to say about it. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers War for Cybertron, Covert Agent Ravage, and Decepticons Forever Ravage. Happy Halloween!